welcome to Real Life Talks, which is a web series talk show where we chat about issues that are important to the community and our families. It's where we learn from each other, support one another, and encourage others to build a strong, positive community together. It's sort of like it takes a village, which is something that I really love about our South Asian culture. I'm Kimberlys Parents, and I am a Gen I, a generation immigrant. I am married to a white dude, and we have a whole wheat little boy, which is a little brown from me and a little white from my hubby. I'm also a life coach and DearDIDI, which is a culturally sensitive advice column where we answer questions. I would love to introduce to all of you our wonderful co-hosts. First, we have Ruba, who is a Pakistani-Canadian woman. She's married with 3 great kids. And welcome, Ruba.
Thanks, Kimberly. So excited to be here. So, as you mentioned, Ruba, I was born and raised in Toronto, and I've spent a lot of my life kind of trying to connect between my Pakistani roots and my Canadian roots. And I've spent a lot of my married life as a mom trying to encourage my children to find that fine balance so they're able to be proud Pakistani Canadians. I've spent the last 12 years working very closely with the newcomer community, which is a strong passion of mine. So helping newcomer Canadians also find that balance between understanding their roots and also settling successfully into Canada and becoming a part of this country. So thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're very pleased to have you here. Aisha is right beside Ruba, and she is a single girl living downtown, and she's pursuing a career in healthcare. Welcome, Aisha.
Thank you, Kulvinder. It's lovely to be here and share this platform with these women. I'm very excited to connect with everyone at home because especially while growing up, the types of issues we'll be discussing today are exactly the types of issues I had no one to speak with about. And so I'm glad we're able to share our messages and perhaps give advice and connect with those at home.
Wonderful. Well, we're very happy that you're able to come out and speak to our wonderful audience and share your perspective. Next up is Harpreet. She is a fellow Sikh feminist, and she is an educator, and she has an absolute stunning voice. I was very privileged to be at her very first recital, which was sold out. She is married and very active in the community. Welcome, Harpreet.
Thank you. Yeah, I also was born actually not in Canada. I was born in England, and I grew up in Canada. I moved here when I was less than a year, and music has become a passion, and it was one way for my parents to make sure that I kept the culture alive, and it was one way that that I learned the language Punjabi and learned to read it, and so so then I went into the education field, and that's definitely a passion of mine, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you today.
Great, thank you. We're very excited for you to be here too. And right beside me, I have our wonderful guest today, Kimberly. She's from Delta Dawn Florals, and she is the creator behind this beautiful centerpiece. And she's also a wonderful supporter of Real Life Talks. Thank you very much for that. And she's going to be sharing her perspective on this topic as well. And we're going to find out a little bit more about Delta Dawn Florals as part of our DearDIDI Recommend later on today. So let's get started. In the South so what is a Gen I? You probably haven't heard this term before. It's because I made it up, okay? So Gen Is are children who have parents from a different birth country. So for example, I was born here in Canada, and I have parents that come from India. So what about you ladies? Why don't you share a little bit about your Gen I experience, if that's part of your background?
Sure. So as I mentioned in my little intro there, my parents came here many, many years ago. My dad came about 7 or 8 years before my mom did. And then I was born here, me and my brother were both born here. And so they have been, they struggled a lot trying to teach us that mix of the culture. So in the beginning, it was very difficult for them, and it was, either you're 100% Pakistani everything, or you're the exact opposite. And so that was very scary for them. So they put a lot of that pressure into being that Pakistani everything. And so as I grew up, I kind of started to find my own balance and be very proud of both of my roots. And now as an adult with 3 children, that's something that I'm constantly pushing on them as well, to make sure that they are not ignoring one or the other, to make sure that they're combining them both and being proud of being both. And even Muslim, right? So you have that other mix as well. So you have, you can be Pakistani and Canadian and throw in that Muslim, and that exactly is what a Canadian is, a great mix of all 3.
Absolutely. And it really is that delicate balancing act, because they are dealing with 2 cultures, right? So you're Canadian first and foremost, but you also have that dynamic of the culture that, like you said, your parents did not want to lose. They wanted to instill that in you, and we're proud. We're proud of our culture, but we're a little bit, in the middle. And like you said, you want to be able to instill that into your children now. You have 3 little ones, so it's important, definitely. So.
Well, I guess I can begin and say I was born in Bangladesh. However, I'm a fairly westernized Canadian Bengali, I would say. I migrated to North America when I was about 9 years old. And I've lived in New York City for several years. And then my family moved to Toronto. So I would say I was largely raised in Toronto. And for me, it has always been a tricky balance, embracing both cultures and trying to find the best of both and incorporate that into my value systems and into my life. So I would say, I've encountered difficulties along the way. Even when I was a preteen, I remember the first time I really felt not a part of a community was when I had changed schools in grade 8. And so let me begin by saying in grade 7, I was in a very diverse community. I was in a very multicultural school. However, for grade 8, I moved away and I was suddenly surrounded by all white kids. I was the only brown girl in my class. And there was one other brown boy, so everyone automatically assumed we must like each other.
Best friends.
We weren't. Everyone just thought we liked each other. But anyways, that's just to say, at that time I really did feel like an outcast, and I'm sure that's had an influence in shaping my personality. And I'm also a little different in that I moved away for a university. So, that was different. Sorry.
That's great.
So I think my family's had this travel bug because my grandfather was born in India but lived in Africa for a long time in Kenya, and then once he went back to India, my parents all immigrated to England, and so they grew up and that's where I was born, and then we all immigrated to Canada. Actually, I didn't meet my father for 9 months after I was born because he was settling in Canada and I was still in England. And so that was the first time I met when I came over. So I think there's some sort of travel bug or this whole curiosity or
You're global.
courageousness, because I mean just the idea of just leaving everything behind and to go to somewhere new. It just astounds me, and it just makes me think of how much courage they had to be able to do that, and of course the challenges, like the stories that you were just saying, resonated very well with me. I grew up in Hamilton, and it was a very you can say non-diverse community, and growing up there, it was. I was the only Indian girl in my class, and it does shape who you are, and almost sometimes you feel like you're living a dual life. But again, Rabia, like you're saying, like once you figure out like how that becomes your identity, and what aspects become your identity, you feel like you're more wholesome, or you have such a rich culture and idea to make you who you are.
Yeah, that's great. And Kimberly?
You guess maybe by looking at me that I have exactly the same struggle. Interestingly enough, though, listening to you, I recall as a kid feeling a bit of a sense of envy towards people who had close associations with a specific culture and a specific background. I always call myself a mutt because my ethnic background is so diluted at this point that I can only say that I'm Canadian, really. 3rd and 4th generation immigrants from all over the place. So as much as there are struggles on that side, it's interesting because there's something to be proud of and something to be envied as well about having a close tie to something specific. and as well as something new. So you have the challenges, but the benefits of both sides too.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, we have a little whole wheat boy, and my husband is very similar to you. His family's been here for a long time. So when we're talking about culture, the South Asian culture is predominant in teaching him and to be proud of it and talk about it and embrace it and stuff. So speaking of which, the South Asian community, there's lots of different perspectives and viewpoints. So I'd like to introduce our question that we're going to be talking about today and really get your take on it, so that the people can learn from you on what your experiences were all about. So let's get started. It's very appropriately named. It says "Not ready to catch the bouquet," since our guest is a florist. Is there such a thing as marriage season? If you heard the talk around our dinner table at home, you would certainly think so. As the summer heats up, so does the talk of weddings. And of course the question, when is your daughter going to get married? I don't want an arranged marriage, but it is getting harder to ignore all the subtle and not so subtle hints. So, ladies, how would you answer this question? Jump in. Anyway.
Well, perhaps as a single lady on the panel, I'll start. And I'll start by saying that I am somewhat of an exception to the common practice in South Asian communities where people probe, because my parents have absolutely never put any pressure on me to get married. But perhaps I should explain better that I also come from a divorced family. So my parents separated when I was in my 20s. And certainly that's had a role in shaping how I've made decisions. But to be very honest with you, I don't feel the pressure to get married. However, I do feel a pressure to marry within my community. And by community, perhaps I'm referring to my Bengali community. My parents are Muslim. Certainly they would prefer that I married a Muslim man. However, I'm a 30-year-old woman in my own right. And
Good girl. Yeah.
you know, I choose to define my life the way I see fit, and for me, race and community bindings aren't a limitation.
Great. So for me, it was a little bit different. I got married very young, right out of university, actually, just a couple months after I graduated, and I met my husband through university. So it was a very quick click, and we were friends for quite some time, and then we got married. So we didn't have that kind of pressure,
Right.
But I do know in my family and just through friends that there's always that expiry date that they put on individuals sometimes. You know, when you start to get towards the mid to late 20s, and it's like, when, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I think that was a lot more in the previous generation. I find with our generation, people are taking that extra time to get settled in their careers, or taking that time to meet the right person and really settle down with someone they want to spend the rest of their lives with, rather than just settling.
Right.
And I think it's not so much the parents all the time, which I find it's sometimes what the community, that term, what
Yes.
are people gonna say?
Yes.
It's like the downfall of so many of our families,
Yeah.
right? It's not even the parents so much. They understand their children, they understand the time it takes, and they love their kids, and they want them to have the best.
Right.
But it's just the surrounding community sometimes is so in your face all the time, It's like
It's
the second
true.
every wedding you go to, every party,
Yeah.
and the second, an auntie sits down with your mom, it's about to be that conversation.
Yes,
right? And you're like
absolutely.
nervous
No,
from
no,
far
no.
away. So I think it's, the parents always seem to want what's best for their kids, and so for me it was a little bit different, but we do have a lot of those rishta aunties in the family that are constantly like taking the names and numbers of the single ladies, trying to make sure they hook them up. So it does happen quite a bit.
Yeah, I bet.
And I guess where it comes to my marriage, I think there's like this blend called suggested marriage. So I think mine was something like a suggested yet arranged marriage. So
Yeah.
I was introduced to my husband through my family, through my parents, and then we got hung out for a few months, and then my father said, if you want to hang out with him more, then you have to
it's time.
decide.
Yeah.
You're gonna hang out, and again, what are
For
people,
the whole life.
Whatever
Yeah,
you
whatever
say.
you're gonna say.
And so it wasn't a no, so by default it's a yes.
Yeah.
And so Yeah, we've been hanging out for many, many years.
That's awesome. Nice way to describe marriage.
And of course it has its ups and downs, and I think where it comes to any type of marriage, like, you know,
Absolutely.
I think it's the things that keep it together are the fact that you're committed to this, and so that's one thing. But I do resonate with both of your stories, you know, about being a kid and really being educated and all this. It seems like it's all for you to get married. It's not a resume for a job or for anything.
No.
It's a resume for marriage, right? So
Yeah.
it's something that you can go on that biodata.
It's the ammunition
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
response.
Yeah.
And it's interesting what kind of education is accepted or whatever. Oh, why don't you become a teacher? Or why don't you work at a bank? Why don't you work at one of those 9-to-5 jobs, right? Where
Yes.
you can, you know, then support the family as well. But it's been definitely a ride, a fun journey, and
Sounds good.
I waited, worth the wait, incidentally.
Yes.
And I really, what you said really resonates with me, Rabia, about the difference between settling and settling down.
Yeah.
My concern about all the pressures, whether they be personally imposed pressures, biological pressures, or societal family pressures, is there's a huge risk of settling.
Yeah.
We do it to ourselves, we do it to each other, we do it to our families, and I'm grateful that I didn't have a lot of external pressure, because like I said, it was really worth the wait. And I like to think that even in situations like yours, there is an element there of choice.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of people in a lot of cultures do resonate with the idea of an arranged marriage. Stats show that they work fairly well in a lot of cases, at least as defined by
My parents
success.
had a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And at the end of the day, you know, I feel comfortable with the notion if at the beginning of the day you had the choice
Yeah.
to say yes or no,
Right.
or to say no.
Yeah.
Well, I said no a lot of times
Yeah.
before. I said
Yes, exactly. Which is what happened to me. I have 4 siblings that are older that were they were born in India, so they did the traditional route. They graduated, they got married. It was an arranged marriage. They had children, all of that stuff. And then, and I looked at my parents, and they had a fantastic arranged marriage. They married for 64 years. They talked and talked and talked. They were real communicators with each other and real advocates of one another. So I'm thinking, why wouldn't I want that? You know, why wouldn't I let them, you know, do a match up and stuff? So we did the matrimonials, we did the shadi.com, we did, you know, the personals and all that other stuff. I was completely open to it, but there was a lot of no's, you know, because these guys weren't like my dad, right? Which was open-minded, loved his kids, wanted the best for his kids and stuff like that. So you couldn't get that right off the bat. So I even went as far as telling my friends that if they invited all of their single guys, you know, to a party, and if I connected with them, that I would, you know, take them out to a spa day, you know. Needless to say, I have a spa certificate still hanging around somewhere. But my husband actually literally came knocking on the door. We had known each other for 10 years. And as soon as he came to a Christmas party that I invited him to, the rest was history. So it was nice. So speaking of which, if you like what we've been talking about and are curious to find out what the original question and answer was, please go to our website at REALLIFEtalks.com and you can check it out. So now that brings us to our DearDIDI Recommends segment, which is each week we will spotlight a woman entrepreneur that they inform us and educate us and they give back to the community. So today is Kimberly and Delta Dawn. So thank you very much for being with us. And so tell us a little bit about your business.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me here. I've learned a lot already, and it's nice to be able to share what we do. I left what I call a real life career, more than 9 to 5, closer to 80 to 100 hours a week, to get a life, as I frequently describe it. So now I'm broke and I'm happy. I get to share what I do with people, usually in happy circumstances, and when not, I get to brighten it up and make it a little bit easier, I think. We focus on local product. We support Ontario agriculture. A lot of our friends are farmers from local markets in the community. We have great access in Ontario now to almost everything, almost all year round, with indoor growing and just great providers and cooperatives. Helps us to keep the budget down,
Which is great.
which is great, and a factor
Awesome.
for almost everybody.
Yes.
We love to be creative. We love the challenges of getting to, getting the style to match the budget to make people's events.
Great. And so if you would like to find out more about Delta Dawn florals, go to deltadawn.ca. And you will be able to connect with Kimberly. And Kimberly has a special offer for all of those in the audience that are going to be getting married. If you give them the promo code REALLIFEtalks, she will give you 20% off your wedding. Yay! In 2017. So thank you very much for watching. And if you love, we would love to hear from you. So please go to our website at RealLifeTalks.com. Drop us a line if there's something that you want us to discuss or a question that you want us to get our perspective on. And join us next time when we share ourselves in order for us to build a strong, positive community together. Until next time, speak up and listen.